It is good to be back in Los Angeles. Now that I've got my full setup here with my desktop and everything the way I like it, I can actually put out videos a bit more frequently than I did during the holidays. I hope everyone had a good Thanksgiving, by the way. I know not all countries celebrated, but for those who did, hope it was good. I hope you spend time with family and friends and stuff your stomach and all that. Today I want to talk about the developer of a game you might be aware of. It's called Ancestors: The Humankind Odyssey, and it is an Epic Store exclusive for now. And it is also developed by Patrice Désilets, I believe that's how it's pronounced, who is the former Assassin's Creed director, essentially. He's sort of known for creating the Assassin's Creed series. So there were a lot of expectations from him, given his past history, and he was pursuing this new venture called Ancestors: The Humankind Odyssey, which is published by the Private Division label from Take-Two. The game launched not that long ago, and it didn't garner the best of reviews. It got mixed reviews. Some people liked it, some people not so much. So if you go to the Metacritic right now, you'll see that the Metascore is currently at a 64 from 70 critics, and the user score is at 5.7 from 181 user reviews. A lot of people agree on the same thing. Ancestors: The Humankind Odyssey is an ambitious game with some really cool ideas and some really cool survival elements that just outstays its welcome and doesn't have the depth of gameplay to keep players engaged for the amount of time that this game asks you to stay hooked. The game isn't deep enough, and the systems aren't fleshed out enough, and certain elements are too clunky for it to be considered a great game, despite some really neat ideas. From all the reviews I've read, that's sort of the general sentiment. I haven't played the game, so I'm not going to judge it. That's just sort of what's out there based on all the user and critic reviews I've seen. But Patrick Désilets believes that there's foul play involved, which I think it's just him being just a bit of a sore loser instead of trying to take the criticism and taking that in stride and trying to improve for his next venture. So this is a story that was conveyed by news outlet Eurogamer, but the original article who first reported on this was Games Industry, where they transcribed what Panache Digital co-founder Patrice Désilets, who went indie, said during Reboot Develop Red, which is this event where the former creative director of Assassin's Creed talked about the reception surrounding Ancestors: A Humankind Odyssey. And here is one of the first quotes that is highlighted in this article. "I'm used to having bigger numbers than that, so it's the elephant in the room," he said, referring to the first 3 Assassin's Creed games, all of which had Metacritic averages between 80 and 90. "But people expected my studio of 35 people to ship a game that is really close to Assassin's Creed, and it's just not possible. We made some harsh decisions in order to ship the game, and we wanted it to be different." I don't get the sense that that's necessarily true. I'm sure some people, when they heard the name Patrice Désilets, they thought, oh, he should make something along the lines of Assassin's Creed. But I think people are open to the idea of developers trying something new. And with Désilets, I think people understood that this development studio, Panache Digital, was a small studio, that it was kind of an indie studio of sorts, where they were making indie/AA at best sort of games. I think that mentality was there, and I really don't think people expected a AAA high-budget Assassin's Creed level of a game from this studio. So I think that by itself is already something that I disagree with. People knew the position that Désilets was in, and they just wanted a cool game that functioned properly and that had some cool elements that were fleshed out. But Human Odyssey, unfortunately, fell short in certain areas, and that really is all there is to it. And then he continued, "We know for a fact that some reviewers actually didn't play the game." So this is what's drawing a lot of backlash, that he is accusing a lot of these reviewers not playing the game, and that's why they gave it a bad score. He's basically saying there's no way that my game can be seen as being a bad game, and that if you gave it a bad score, then you just didn't play it or you just didn't get it, and you are just not being legitimate with your criticism. And that kind of mentality is dangerous for a developer because it doesn't allow them to grow. It's just very cocky, it's very self-centered, there's a lack of introspection there. Maybe your game just fell short in certain areas, and maybe for, if there's a sequel or a next entry in that series, you could strive to improve. You could take the criticism to heart and just try to make a better game. It's okay to get a lower score with this ambitious new venture that you're doing. You tried something different, and that's something that can be appreciated, but you can't just look at the Metacritic score and say, this is bullshit, I'm just a great game developer, and this is just people not understanding my vision, or this is just people being unfair about their ratings. And it'd be one thing if there was a huge discrepancy between what the feedback is surrounding this game, but while there are a lot of good critical reviews where the game got a high score, there are plenty of low scores or just sort of average scores that highlighted the exact same issues with the game, that its systems just aren't fully fleshed out, that it's just too long, too repetitive, that it gets boring after a while, that it doesn't have the kind of depth that it needs to, and that it's just clunky in certain areas. That is something that's highlighted across the board throughout many reviews, though for some, the game concept and what it went for was compelling enough that it warranted a high score. So the reviews are definitely mixed for this one, but even a lot of the user reviews highlight the exact same issues, that the game strives for something really interesting but doesn't ultimately fully achieve that. And then Désilets continued, it is part of our industry. They have to review games and they have 15 of them to review in 1 week, and sometimes they don't have time. And since Ancestors is so different, some of them went, ugh, I don't have time for this. So again, it's just this widespread accusation saying that most reviewers just didn't finish the game or didn't play it. Now here's the thing, a lot of the major outlets have a big staff, and so different people helm different games. Désilets then cites one particular incident. He says, quote, and we know for a fact that some just invented some elements in the game, like there's no fire and you cannot ride any horses, even though one reviewer said, oh, it wasn't that great when you ride a horse. Yes, my people are pissed, by the way. He's saying, I saw one review that made up crap, and so all reviews must be corrupt. It should be noted that Patrice doesn't exactly highlight which specific outlet said something about horse riding and fire and elements that didn't really exist in the game, but most reviews out there, if not all the ones that I've seen, never really mentioned anything about horse riding. The fact of the matter is that most reviews out there did in fact finish the game and didn't make up crap. So maybe this specific instance is out there, but that doesn't really necessarily mean that suddenly all reviews out there are in this mass conspiracy to give the game a bad score, or that all reviewers didn't play the game and that their feedback is just completely unfair and unwarranted. So you've got Eurogamer right here saying, in the Eurogamer review, Christian Donlan, who didn't mention horses incidentally, said Ancestors is ambitious and clunky and not much fun, and it's often quietly thought-provoking too. And then here's what VG247 had to say about the matter. Quote, VG247 reviewed Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey back in August. It isn't very good, but we didn't make up anything about riding horses. And if you look at a lot of the reviews out there, you'll see that they don't make up anything about horses. And I'll highlight again that the feedback surrounding Ancestors, the Humankind Odyssey, its flaws, are universal. I've seen the same thing said over and over again across most reviews, both from critics and users alike. So instead of worrying about the score, just worry about that feedback and then just make a better game. You just cannot have this mentality of, well, I made all these great games in the past, therefore all my games from here on out will be great, and if anyone says otherwise, then they're just being dishonest. And then in this next quote, Désilets shares the sentiment that, quote, some didn't understand it before they gave up trying. It needs an hour, he said, before adding, maybe 2. Well, at the very least, these reviewers did play the first couple hours of the game, and again, from what I've seen, a lot of them did in fact finish the game before relaying their thoughts. And the funny thing is that a lot of criticism isn't even about the first half of the game, it's more about the latter parts where the game just stops developing, it stops evolving, which is ironic given that the game's about evolution. A lot of the feedback that I read basically said that you just keep doing the same things over and over again, and the game just becomes grindy at that point. It stops introducing enough new elements for it to be compelling throughout however long it takes to complete the game. So from what I gather, it's not that people didn't understand the game, it's just that it was too shallow for its length, and that shallowness became more and more apparent the further you delved into the game, the further you delved beyond that initial first or second hour. So this once again feels like Désilets is just trying to come up with any excuse to justify the fact that his game didn't get as good of review scores as he would have liked it to. And then right here, he talks about the fact that they had to rush certain aspects of the game. They just didn't have the time or resources to do everything they wanted to do. So this reads right here: we shipped the game and we left 72 pop-up tutorial messages on the floor. We couldn't do it. They are coming now for the console version. They will be in. It will be easier, but we didn't have time. You need to eventually say at the end of the day that you have to ship, and that's more important than anything else. So another major criticism of the game is that it's ridiculously punishing for no real good reason. It's the kind of punishing that doesn't yield rewards that make the punishing elements worth it. And so maybe the tutorial aspect of this that he's talking about here, maybe that could have mitigated some of that. And he basically says we didn't have time to implement that. And that right there is just not the fault of reviewers who universally agree that there are elements to this game that feel half-baked or that feel too shallow. Now, Désilets does state right here that Humankind Odyssey, from a commercial standpoint, did break even. That probably had in large part to do with the Epic Games Store exclusive deal, where Désilets and his team probably got a good chunk of money to keep it Epic exclusive for a limited time. And with the game coming out on consoles, they're probably going to recoup more of that money. They can always just try again and make a better game next time, but that's going to be more difficult to do if you have this mentality of, I can do no wrong, I cannot make bad games. There is always room to grow, no matter how experienced you are, no matter how wise you are, or how long you've been in an industry, how experienced you are in a profession. Whenever you try something new, there is always a chance that you will stumble, and all you can do in that situation is learn from your mistakes, get back up, don't get pissy about it, don't blame other people. So yeah, there you have it, folks. This is my general take on this whole situation. Long story short, I think Patrice Désilets is being really egotistical here. He's basically saying, if my game doesn't review well, then clearly reviewers didn't play it. But if it does review well, then clearly they played it. And it's just like, no, that's not how that works. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on Patrice Désilets' thoughts surrounding his newest game, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.